Hey friends, it's Bridget. I thought I'd share a January flip through of my memory keeping journal and talk about some of the supplies that I've been using recently that have just been kind of like go-tos for me. I am in a Hobonichi cover this year, A5 size, but instead of the Hobonichi cousin Avec that I've used for creative journaling and memory keeping in the past, I decided to start 2023 with just the blank Hobonichi notebook in the A5 size. So these blank pages are gridded, but they're otherwise blank, so completely undated. So far it's working really well. I grabbed two in case I needed two for the full year, but right now it's looking like one might be enough. So I started with this little memo pad that came in a stationery selection sub box, and I used an old stamp set to stamp out the year as well as the start date and a dash. So the plan is whenever this is completed, especially if I have to transition into a second notebook, I'll just stamp out the end date at that time. So one thing that I've been using sporadically that I've really been enjoying is this stamp that I got. It has the days of the week, the months of the year, and then like a little numeric calendar at the bottom. Has moon phases also, but I've just been stamping this out and circling the day of the week, month, and date. I also frequently use, almost daily, this date stamp that has kind of a vintage vibe to me, like this. And it's just a basic office stamp that I've had for years. It is self-inking. You could pick something like this up at Office Depot is probably where I got it, or Amazon. And I almost always do these numbers as well, these stencil numbers. So this is an old stencil sheet that I've had for many, many years. I want to say I picked it up at Michael's. For the actual journaling, this looks like it might have been a gel pen, but 90% of the time, if not more, I pretty much do my journaling with the Hobonichi pen that came with my Hobonichi order. And just got a little tip in there, another little tip in. This came from the same memo book that this did. I still enjoy using these printables from Courtney Diaz with Little Raven ink. She has a Patreon tier that provides monthly printables, so I've been a subscriber of that for quite some time. More journaling. I almost always hand letter the date, not the date, the day of the week, the weekday. I kind of just consider that almost like practice for hand lettering. And there are a couple different sets of markers that I most frequently grab to do this. They're not the only ones I use, but these are probably my most frequently used, this Sailor set. And then just recently I picked up this set at Michael's, and it's actually watercolor brush pens, but I've just been using them like a regular marker and not going over them with any water after they've been used. I tried to start incorporating some more stamping because I do have so many stamps that I've accumulated over the years that I really like, but I don't tend to reach for. So I wanted to start using my stamps more often, and I started out pretty strong, and I've kind of already faded away from that, so I need to get back to using my stamps. But I almost always put down a little messy background of watercolor, and I pretty frequently just do some kind of random border on my pages. I just like the look of a full, almost like a busy page. It's just personal preference, I guess. But one thing that I'm really liking about using the blank notebook is not being bound by one page per day. So with this, for example, this was the 3rd of January, this was the 4th of January, but then I just continued on to the back because I had some ephemera, some packaging I wanted to put down. So this page is also still for the 4th. So I like being able to take 2 or even 3 or 4 pages if needed for a date. And then you'll see a little later that sometimes I've put multiple dates on a single page if I don't have a lot to say. So I like that flexibility so far. This was a key card to the hotel that I stayed at this date. Hand lettering, same stamp, same stencil. I've started and pretty much continued for the past few months this kind of abstract interpretation of the number stencils. I used to just do the stencil and then color the whole thing in solid, but I've gotten to where I like outlining it and then just almost closing my eyes, just kind of putting some messy lines inside. And then sometimes I color them different colors like this. I'm trying to use the washi that I have. I have regular rolls that I like to use, and then I have a lot of the little kits. Okay, so I'm a huge fan of the little Kita kits, the little washi strips. And so some of them that have a particular design like this, I would obviously leave whole or as is, but I like the look when you have one that's more of a uniform design. I like taking those strips and then ripping them in half and sometimes even in quarters and just kind of messily putting them on the page. I think it just gives a little more interest and kind of takes up, if you just have like a small area of empty space, it's kind of a pretty way, I think, to take up the space. So this is some more ephemera from this weekend trip, and some of the borders that look like paint, that, you know, more opaque. I've been using the Posca paint pens. Really like them a lot. So the paint markers, they look like this. This is another cute printable from Courtney, Little Raven ink. I'm trying to, and I think I've done a good job so far this year of just capturing more real life ephemera, like receipts. And this was a card that was in the hotel, and just trying to keep that either, if I'm not at home, in my purse in one place, or, you know, just try to keep it together so I'll have some ephemera to add in later. Another printable from Courtney. And then I tried to start adding more photos, and I watch a lot of videos by Mitts, My Life Mitts, here on YouTube, and I've seen her multiple times talk about how she's printing some of her photos just on regular copy paper instead of photo paper. So I did that in the month of January, but I'm gonna have to drag out my little Canon selfie to get some better quality pictures moving forward. This one, it's not as noticeable, but especially if it's a photo that has people in it, for some reason my printer is not performing well at all right now, and it makes the skin tone of a person look really off. Like if they have fair skin like me, it makes their skin come out looking super purplish red, just really awkward. And I think it might be the toner in my printer right now. But I have a laser printer, and I got laser when my inkjet finally died a good while ago, and I chose laser because it's waterproof. So I thought that would be good to have laser printouts for my journaling. And when I first bought the printer, the toner that came with it was fine. It printed really good quality. But when that toner ran out, I replaced it with like a different or kind of an off-brand toner that said it was compatible with my printer. And I'm just wondering if it's not the off-brand toner that's making my printouts look so bad. But what's frustrating is I looked up the brand name toner for my printer, and holy cow, it is expensive. It is actually costs more, almost double than what I paid for the whole printer. So I don't know what I'm going to do in the future, if I'm going to shell out that kind of money for brand name toner or just continue having poor quality prints. These are a bunch of packaging that I included on the tail end of that weekend trip in Dallas. I made a stop by the Kinokuniya. Y'all know I can't pronounce these words, but this store, they have one in New York, right across the street from Bryant Park. And I've been to that location 3 or 4 times. Absolutely love it. It is amazing. But this one is in, was it Carrollton? Yes, Carrollton, which is basically just right there at Dallas, Texas. So it's a much smaller location, but they still had some neat stuff. So I picked up a little haul before I left town, and this is just some of the packaging from some of the stationery items I picked up. These were a couple of stamps that I grabbed, and I had in mind, I haven't done it yet, but I had in mind using these for like an ink journal for my fountain pen inks. I just thought they were really cute. And this was kind of like a bookmark, but they gave me 2. So I put one in my journal as a tip in, and then I kept the other one to use as an actual bookmark when I'm reading physical books and not reading from my Kindle. And then this cute little scenery here was actually printed on the plastic bag that they put my items in. So I cut the bag up and put that down on one page, and then put the other side of the bag on this page. So you can see here, January 8th, 8th. This is an example of taking like multiple, what was that, 4 pages for one day. So here we are to January the 9th. Kind of just, this is my little formula, I guess. Watercolor background, little border of some sort. I just did a number only for the date on this page, a little journaling, some Courtney printouts, and this was another printout from my printer of a photo. And then my husband and I had gone before dinner that night to our concealed carry renewal course, and when we did the portion at the end where you actually have to shoot, they gave me my target paper. So I just, of course it was a huge sheet, probably 3 feet tall, but I just cut out the section around the bullseye to put in my journal. And then this is an example, I didn't really have anything to say on these days, so I put the 10th and the 11th of January on one page. and did a little bit of doodling here. This is a Courtney printable, but this is an older printable from Patreon, and the account is Cheyenne Barton. She also has a YouTube channel, and I love her little plant sketches, so I printed out quite a bit of them a long time ago. Here I put the 12th and the 13th on one page. These are from Courtney. These were some stickers from some plants that I bought and some packaging. Then we move into the 14th, and we hosted a baby shower here at my house. So this was the invitation for that. Tipped it into the spine and some pictures, and you can see here that you can't even really make out the faces because of my toner issue, but it's what I had at the time, so I went ahead and included it. Here we have the 15th, 16th, 17th, and 18th on a 2-page spread. Another little tip in, and I found an old roll of washi tape that has the days of the week on it. And I mean, this is not earth-shattering or, rocket science here, but when I'm doing the little borders, I do try to mix it up and just be random, so whatever comes to mind, I'll kind of change up the designs a little bit from time to time just for a little interest. This was some packaging, and I think all of these printouts are Little Raven ink. This was from some packaging from some fragrance that I had bought a long time ago. And I kind of got away from, I guess, pulling out this stamp that I started out with, but I pretty consistently use that other date stamp throughout the book. Here's the 19th and 20th, just some journaling, hand lettering, Courtney printables. I just took one of those Posca paint markers that I showed earlier. After I had done the border, I had some empty space here, so I just used the very end of the tip to make a little dot inside each of the squares of the grid, just for some interest up, high and low. And now we're to the 22nd, 3rd, 4th, and 5th. Some more packaging. I finally ordered a little runner of the cream correction tape instead of the bright white, and it looks really good on the Hobonichi cream paper. So if you have a Hobonichi Weeks or even the Midori would be perfect. These little quotes that I do every now and then, I'm kind of just messily writing out with a pen that we received in a stationery selection box, and it just is a kind of nondescript. I don't have it with me right now, but it just kind of looks like a black, almost looks like a fountain pen, but when you take the cap off, the end is really like a felt tip marker. And I really like how it's a good bit bolder than a regular pen, so it kind of makes the quote stand out a little bit. This was chicken taco soup that I made for supper that night. Sometimes I do just regular print with my hand lettering. Most of the time I, revert to cursive. So here we've got a couple days on one page. I started occasionally dividing the page for like a little more of a visual separation between the 2 days, and then just laying down some more washi. These little squares of just abstract design, I just love the way these look, and This is 365 collage paper from, I'm not sure how to pronounce the first word, surprise, surprise, but it's either Chamil, something like that, Chamil Garden, made in Japan. So I love that brand. They have really beautiful designs, and a lot of them are kind of abstract. So this is really thin, slightly translucent paper, but every single day it had 365 slips, and every single day is a different pattern. So I don't think it repeats at all. So that is pretty cool to have 365 different designs, but you could get creative in how you use these. I just think they're super cute. And I just glued one down here. This stamp is this wooden stamp that was an exclusive stationery selection stamp from an older box. And here you can see I brought out the block date again. Now on these days, the dates, on most of them I did the coloring in with colored pencils. So I've got this huge little bag of colored pencils, and I just reach and I don't care. I've got two main types in here. One is just the little cheapy Crayola brand, and they work just fine. And then this other set that looks like this, Veritas color, it to me is a little better quality than the Crayola. They're a little smoother, I guess, when you're coloring with them. But for something like this, you know, it's not like it's noticeable that one's better than the other. But a lot of times I'll just blindly reach in the bag and grab 2 or 3, and whether they're complementary colors or not, I'll just kind of go with whatever I grab. And I started out using several different colors, like especially on this one, and then I kind of went through a phase where I would just choose 2 colors and kind of alternate the blocks and just see what I ended up with. So we're already to the 29th, and this looks a lot, yeah, so on the 29th this looks a lot smoother. So here, instead of the colored pencils, I colored the dates in with the little thin end of these Zig Clean Color Dot markers, because they come with that really fine, almost like a ink pen size nib. So I used that to color in, and I made that one pretty solid. And then when I got to the 30th, I did the same thing, but I was a little messier with it, and I felt like that gave it a little more texture. So more Courtney printables packaging from some new washi that I picked up on that Kinokuniya haul. This was some packaging and a receipt, and this is another one of these that I put down here and then stamped on top of it. And this looks like a sticker because it's so large, but it's not. It's actually part of a washi roll, and it was this one right here. So this I've had forever, but it's still in really good condition. It's not gummy, and it has really good adhesion on it still, even though I've had this for I don't know how many years now. But this came from the London Gifties shop, her website. She has such beautiful washi tapes, and they're unique, and she has a lot that are a larger size like this. So that was off of that roll. And then 31st is the last day of January. So on these kind of headings, they're a little messy. These were done using the Hobonichi brush pen that came as a freebie either last year or year before, can't remember. But if you do a lot of pressure on the downstroke, you can get more of a calligraphy look in your brush lettering. But if you don't use a lot of heavy pressure and just use it almost like a regular ink pen, you get this nice, just kind of slightly bold writing. I like the way it looks. And this was the day that I started back to yoga, and I'm still going. Super excited about that. I had been going for months, loved it, and then just inadvertently kind of got off track and started missing. And before I knew it, I had been out like 4 months, and my body could feel it, I promise you. So I'd been wanting to return for a long time. I finally started back on this day, and at the studio that I go to, they have a setup of this Yogi brand tea and a hot and cold water dispenser. So I almost always make a hot cup of tea when I'm there, and I started collecting the packaging from the tea. So for the rest of the book, you'll see several of these. But that was all for January. So there's some things that I'm happy with and some things that I definitely want to improve upon. I'm happy that I have been collecting more real life ephemera instead of just the printables. I love the printables and they're fun, but I like to flip back, since I consider this like a memory keeping journal. I like, as I'm flipping back through, to see more real life ephemera, because a lot of times it'll remind me without even having to read what I wrote, what happened that day. So I'm happy that I'm doing a better job of collecting things like that to include. What I definitely want to improve upon is I don't think I did a single doodle or drawing or any original art in this entire month. So I pretty much filled my pages with my little formula of watercolor, printables, journaling, hand lettering, and packaging, what have you. But what I would really like to do in the months ahead is get back to, even if it's just a little doodle, just including more original art or doodles, drawings in my journal. That was something that when I first started doing this type of journaling years ago, I would pretty regularly follow the Hobonichi challenge that gets posted on social media each month. And I would follow those prompts, and on each day, try to do a little sketch of whatever the prompt was. I would try to sketch the actual thing. And a lot of times I would, if I had the space, actually do some journaling about the sketch. There was one particular month that to this day has been my all-time favorite. It was a good while ago, but it was about animals, and I just really enjoyed doing all those animal sketches. And a lot of the animals were animals that are like found in other parts of the world and not really native to where I live. So after I would sketch the animal from like a Google image for reference, I would do some journaling somewhere near it and describe some of the facts about it, like not only the name of the animal, but where's it found, what does it eat, or some kind of special fact about it. It was really cool. So I would love to get back to doing something like that, because that has been one of my favorite journals to flip back through over the years. So original sketches is something that I'm disappointed that I didn't include in January, but you know, we got a lot of year left. If you have any questions about any of those supplies that I showed, or just anything journaling in general, feel free to leave it in the comments below and I will get back to you. Thanks so much for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye.